If you're an artificial or a live bait angler, listen up. Whether you like shrimp, croakers, hardtails, or squid, tonight we're going to tell you what baits are hot in each of our 6 regions and where they can be caught or barred. This is the Texas Insider Fishing Report.
Welcome to the Texas Insider Fishing Report. Presented by Yamaha.
Welcome back to the Texas Insider Fishing Report. Today we're doing something a little different, like Rick said, and in addition to telling you where the fish are in your region this weekend, we're focusing on what we all need to catch any fish, and that is bait. Right, Rick?
Absolutely. You know, Brie, whether you fish freshwater, whether you fish offshore, inshore, it's all about the bait, as one of your favorite songs.
Yes, all about the bait.
But that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to help guys have a better understanding whether they can go to a bait shop and catch them, or buy them, or they're going to catch them offshore. They're going to need a few tools to make that happen.
Yes, they are. Before we get down to it, let's see what kind of bait shop talk we'll be discussing with Dave Ferrell, the CCA Workbench. Dave?
I like trying to catch them when they're in the bait shop. They're a lot easier to catch when they're in there.
Oh, look at you.
Just got to give them a little money, and there they come right in. So.
Oh, there you go. It's like anything, you know.
Gotta love it.
I think Dave's a night crawler kind of guy.
Oh,
I
I'll
think
do
so
anything.
too. I'll do anything. All right, starting us off in the Middle Coast region is Captain Bink Grimes with some bait knowledge you're going to want to pay attention to. So, Bink, wow us.
I'll tell you what, my favorite bait in the world to catch a speckled trout is a topwater, namely a mirror sheep up, she dog, top dog, or the top pup. I've made many a check over the years as a writer and photographer with magazine cover shots with some kind of mirror lure, dog walker attached. The new softeen slow sinkers are fun to fool trout as well. Seems like trout always get a running start and thump a softeen or a 51M mirror lure. It's really all about confidence with these baits. I've had many guide buddies who lack the patience of a surface plug, but can fill the cooler while jigging soft plastics or methodically, tossing a mirror lure corky. Some guys I know won't leave the dock without live bait, even when artificial lures are a better choice. We're all different. Our fishing affords everyone a smile, and we all get it done our own way. I tell you what, the trout fishing lately, stiff southerly breezes have pumped up our tides, and those trout are tighter to the shorelines. We're wading and casting the reefs and working sand and grass pockets. Around Freeport, Bastrop, and Christmas Bay, fish have been all over the reefs. Best bet's been on live shrimp cast over the edges of the reef. And there's trout and black drum and small redfish on those edges, too. And then in Palacios, guide Ray Sexton said the trout bites been great on soft plastics while waiting. He's worked the South Shoreline of West Bay most days and concentrated on the flats with a higher tide. He said most of those trout are hanging around at about 40 to 50 yards off the shoreline. Then in Matagorda, Tommy Alexander, he's wading and drifting with soft plastics and catching limits. Again, those high tides has him wading tight to the shoreline with a shell, and while he's drifting, he's making long floats around slick and flipping mullet and catching trout to 5 pounds. Then in Port O'Connor, Lynn Smith said he's been doing great on protected shorelines for fish in the 18 to 24-inch class. Most of those fish come on soft plastics, but top water's produced as well. And when our tides are high like they are right now, those back lakes are good. We've had an influx of tides, new water, and there's a lot of Gulf and large sand trout coming as well. Fish to 2 pounds are not uncommon for these. Best spots lately have been the surf and in East Matagorda Bay. Our bay water temperatures are 73 right now. The magic number's right there, 70 to 72. And when that happens, our fishing really gets good along the Middle Coast. The photo there is a big jetty trout. They're beginning to show with the warmer temperatures. Like I said, it's 73 degrees on the beachfront this week. We'll go to redfish. There's lots of shrimp in our bays, and our bait shrimpers are having no problem keeping the tanks full. When that's the case, fishing usually turns on. Redfish have been up and down in the bays. There's been a lot to do with the fluctuation of the tides. One day you get them, one day you don't. Live bait's been the best bet in the back legs from Freeport to Rockport. Same pattern's been good around Palacios and Matagorda. Crab Lake, Oyster Lake, Coon Islands holding redfish on shrimp and mullet. The tides are high, and most of those fish are right on top of that shell. Waders have found redfish tight to the grass with the floated tides. Those smaller shrimp try to hide that grass, and with the high tides, those reds literally weave up and down, inside, in and out of all that grass. If you see a shrimp hopping, there's a chance there's a redfish right behind it. Best bet for reds continue to be along the beach. Slight size reds have been caught in the first gut. Those bull reds are a little out there, about 20 foot of water off the second bar. And there's been some good ones off the tip of the Matagorda jetty, and the Surfside and the Port O'Connor jetties are holding lots of bull reds as well. They're using cracked crabs there, and they're free lining big old Gulf table shrimp that would be just as good on your plate. Those reds really love them. And so you know, our redfish action has been really, really good. Photo there, large redfish have been roaming the grass line with the higher tides, and, you know, throw right up along that grass and wait for the big bite. We'll go offshore, Freeport. Guide Mike Siegel of Real Thrill Charters, he said those red snapper are really good in safe waters. He's throwing sardines and shad in 35 to 40 foot of water. Lots of sharks as well. And then in Matagorda, Mike Quebec said there's a lot of bull reds and sharks. Kobe are coming in. The kingfish are coming in. I guess as of today, it was about 74 to 75 degrees out there at about the 9 mile mark. And Wahoo are doing just as well. So all our pelagics are coming in close to the beach with the warmer tides.
All right, thank you so much, Bink. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the CCA hot spots from the Middle Coast region. He says redfish, they are good in the back lakes of Port O'Connor on small top pups and live shrimp. And then trout, they're good in Freeport on the edges of the reef on live shrimp under a popping cork.
All right, guide Matt Loescher is giving us an in-depth look at the Star Tri-Middle Fresh region, where Richland, Chambers, and Toledo Bend are at the top of his list with bait galore. Tell us, Matt.
Yeah, I'm going to start off in the Dallas area, talking about those lakes just south of there. Been in touch with Mr. Thurman Selman up there with Bass Specialty Guide Service, and he's giving me a good report on Richland Chambers as well as Lake Fairfield. He says that on Richland Chambers, they're being caught in a variety of ways, the bass that is. But small crankbaits have been good, as well as creature baits fished around brush on a Texas rig or as a jig trailer. And then down on Lake Fairfield, he says the bass are being caught near the bank in the reed or on a Texas rig crawfish type bait. Now, if you'd like to get out on either of those lakes, check out Mr. Selman's website, bassaspecialtyguideservice.com. And now I'm going to jump back down to Toledo Bend, my home water, and talk about the bass there. It's getting a little bit easier to catch this week. Most of the fish are done spawning, and they're hungry. They're looking to feed up, and their shad are starting to spawn, so they will chase a moving bait now better than they have been. The shad spawn has begun, like I said, so look for the bass feeding on those shad in about 2 to 4 foot of water around grass and wood. If there's some wind or cloud cover, you really need to throw that Bass Assassin swim bait in a shad color like Violet Moon or Electric Shad. But if it's calm, especially if the sun's out and they're getting in that thick grass, a topwater frog is a really good choice. Something with a white belly is usually the best during the shad spawn. The fish are a little skinny right now, but they're really aggressive, and it's always fun to catch them when they're chasing that swim bait and the frog. And I've got a photo attached here for you guys of my little buddy Cole hooked up. Not the biggest fish we caught lately, but just a really cool picture. He's hooked up. I got a bass on, and if you look in the background, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a rainbow touching down. It was like we found a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow there. It was pretty neat.
Nice.
That's pretty cool, dude. All right, what else you got for us?
I'm going to talk about some crappie next on Toledo Bend. They've been relocating this week as well. They're changing it up. A lot of those have finished spawning also, and they're beginning to get out on that deep structure. So you want to focus on stumps in 15 to 22 foot of water, and look for the stumps that are right out in front of those spawning areas. The first ones these fish are going to come to when they get done spawning. So get out there and go stump to stump, but don't get discouraged if you only catch a few fish on each spot, because these fish are really just showing up in most of these places. So if you just jump around, you'll catch a few here and a few there, and before you know it, you'll have a nice mess of fish. You'll want to use live minnows to make the most of this bite and fish them about 8 to 15 foot down. I got another photo here for you of the Ortego family on a little Easter trip we took this past weekend. And we didn't catch huge numbers that day, but as you can see there, we got some pretty nice flags.
Those are pretty nice ones, bub. All right, what else you got for me?
All right, I'm going to talk about some big fish on Toledo Bend. The biggest fish that swim in the lake, actually, big catfish. These are some of the most fun to fish, to catch. They bite really hard, and like I said, they get huge. And there's been some really big flatheads caught lately in the shallower areas. Live brim on a shot line or on a limb line are usually the best way to catch them, but they will also bite a minnow, especially when they're hanging around some of those crappie spots. A lady angler on my boat found that out recently, and she hooked a really big one on a crappie rod. I got a photo of that one there for you. She caught that sucker on 8-pound test with a little medium action crappie rod, so it took us for a ride, but we got it in.
Dang, that looks like some good. How do you guys fry that up, Matt?
We like to, there's meat all over that thing. Meat in the belly, big fillets on the sides. And normally we just cut them up into little chunks and bread them and fry them. They're delicious.
Catfish fingers, I like it. All right, what else you got?
Yeah.
One more, give me some white bass info.
All right, last I'm going to talk about those white bass, jumping back up to Richland Chambers. I'm getting reports that they're biting really good up there on main lake humps and flats using slab spin.
All right, well, thank you so much. Great report from the StarTron Middle Fresh region. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the hot spots. He says Richard Chambers has been producing lots of white bass on slab spoons and largemouth bass on crankbaits and creature baits. And then Toledo Bend, largemouth bass are chasing shad in 2 to 4 feet of water. And the crappie are hanging around the stumps in 15 to 22 feet, biting minnows.
Nothing like some catfish fillets. Heck no.
Right?
All right,
my
stay
gosh.
with us. We're getting our Project Lower Fresh region on, but we're going to go see what Dave's doing over at the CCA workbench. In the meantime, what you setting up for, Mr. Dave?
Well, we're going to talk about catching bait, how to catch bait so we can catch fish. If you can catch bait, you can catch fish.
If you
That's
catch
what we're gonna
bait,
be
you
doing.
catch fish.
Catch little fishes
Okay.
to catch big fishes.
We'll be back catching fish.
Yes.
Catch
The
bait.
Texas Insider Fishing Report is brought to you by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. Casa Vieja Lodge, 5-star angling in beautiful Guatemala. Garmin, join the club. Sportsman's Adventures, fishing for adventure. And CCA Texas, a leader in marine conservation.
Yamaha's 4.2-liter V6 offshore 4-strokes. For those that like their V6 lighter, faster, and stronger. Setting new standards for power, efficiency, speed, and lightweight. Built for the rigors of offshore boating. Packed with Yamaha's legendary reliability. And now Yamaha's 4.2-liter V6 4-strokes offer a choice between digital or mechanical controls to match your rigging preference. Yamaha. Reliability starts here.
Pump up the performance in all of your engines. Kick your gas into gear with StarTron.
If you're not a member of Coastal Conservation Association, you need to be. CCA fights on a national and state level for our fishing rights so that our children and grandchildren will have fish to catch today and in the future. CCA, through their habitat programs, create oyster and artificial reefs, as well as many other habitat programs. CCA also each year releases millions of trout, redfish, and flounder, so join myself, Brie, and Dave and become a member of CCA now. Well, we're here at the CCA workbench, and
Yes.
Dave, you know what? This is one of my favorite shows, and when we get to talk about bait and how to catch them, how to become a better angler because of the preparation it takes to be ready.
Yeah, well, whether you're fishing inshore or offshore, it's always easier to fool a fish with something that he eats all the time instead of with a artificial lure. So, you know, if you can catch bait, you can catch fish. I mean, it has a lot to, you know, if you can figure out where the bait are moving and all that stuff to catch the bait, then that really goes a long way in getting you to the place where you're going to be catching fish too. Right. You know, they're very intertwined. You know, the predators that we're chasing are always chasing bait. So if we know where the bait is, we're going to be able to find them. First off, I'm going to talk about shrimp because, you know, when we're fishing in saltwater, especially, you know, shrimp catch everything. And so, you know, it's hard to catch shrimp by yourself unless you're in a place where there's a ton of them, and it's a place where you can throw a cast net on them, or sit out there with a light and catch them. Most of the time you're going to buy them, and if you're going to buy them, it's best if you can buy live shrimp versus dead shrimp. I mean, if you have to, it's not that bad to always have a dead shrimp around, because a lot of fish have been caught on a dead shrimp. A lot of big fish have been big black drums, big red drums. Everything will eat a dead shrimp too. But if you can get a live shrimp and keep it alive, you need to get yourself a little 5-gallon bucket and one of these little portable bubble boxes. Yep. These things really, really work. You see a lot of this kind of stuff in little tackle stores that it's made to rip off a tourist. Well, these little bubble boxes are not.
Correct.
They really, really work. I use them all the time to keep shiners alive.
2 D-cell batteries.
And for a long time, 2 or 3 days, I can keep 12 or 14 shiners alive in my boat underneath the shed. Right. As long as they're not in the sun, and it'll keep them alive.
Because keeping the water cool is a key. Well, you bring the water temperature down, the activity of the bait, whether it's a shrimp.
Right, and here's another little tip that a fella here in town taught me. When you catch your bait, put them in one bucket right when you catch them, and then let them sit in there for a little while before you transfer them to the bait bucket that you're going to keep them in. Right. Because when they first get shocked and go into that water, they drop a lot of urine, and a lot of chemicals go into the water. Ammonia gets in there, and if you can change them out before that happens, you're way ahead of the game. If you put your bait, as soon as you catch them, into a bucket, let them sit in that one, and then the bucket you're going to transfer them in.
Don't dump the bad bucket into the new bucket and contaminate your water.
Just use the baits.
That's a great tip.
Just use the baits. Now, for pilchards, for herring and pinfish and stuff like that, when you're wanting to catch those, any of those white baits that we're wanting to catch, the best thing to use probably to start with is a good sabiki style bait rig. These are made by R&R Tackle. Ray does a great job, and he's very meticulous about his baits, and he makes them from little ones that'll catch little herrings all the way up to great big ones that'll catch goggle eyes and hardtails and big jackfish that you'll want to use for bait, or for marlins or whatever. But when you're catching bait with these single hooks, it's probably the best way to get really good baits, because when you throw a net on baits, you tend to bruise them up and lose some of their slime and whatnot. But when you catch them on bait rigs and you take them off with a hook remover, don't grab them with a de-hooker. Don't grab them with your hand and get a big hold of them and jerk them off the thing and then throw them in your bait well. Try not to touch them. If you can, have the guy hold the lead of the bait sabiki. Of the sabiki rig in one hand, so stretch it out real tight, and the guy can go right down the line and flip them off and never has to touch them, and they go right into the well. But those hair hook caught fish, even with a little tiny gold hook and a piece of fish bites. This stuff, I used to use a little piece of bread all the time. But the fish bites really works great when you're catching pinfish or any type of little brim or anything, for shiners even. When I'm throwing bread balls out there and chumming up with a lot of bread to get shiners active, I'll throw in that little tiny number 10 gold hook with a piece of white fish bites on it, and they will eat it.
Now, if the guys are going offshore and need little bonitas?
Correct. That's my main bait for when I'm trying to catch tunas, is the Clark spoon. And what I'll do is I'll get a triple swivel, and I'll rig 2 of those on a tandem, on a swivel, and have one just a little longer than the other one, and put 2 on each side. Sometimes I'll have one on a planer and the other one's just floating back there on the top, and that way I'll know, oh, okay, I'm getting a lot of bites on the planer rig. I'll get that. One thing before we go, always, if you're using those kind of baits, go ahead and pinch down your barb.
Pinch down the barb.
Yeah, because you don't want that thing chewing up your tunas. And you can also use little tiny rapalas and change off the trebles into single hooks and do the same thing with those. Now, these are really good traps. This is a minnow trap, believe it or not. You can use these in freshwater. They used to use, back in the day, they would use a mason jar and a funnel. And they put the funnel inside the top of the mason jar and close it down and put whatever bait you want in there. And this will catch minnows and, little tiny bait fish, whatever you want. This is like a pinfish trap here. Just, you can put this in salt water and catch whatever little baits you have in there.
The most important part about this, guys, remember this, is you have the entrance here. Mm-hmm. you put a zinc on the bottom so it just sits on the bottom. You gotta put it in a sand hole, because if you put it in the grass and it covers
they won't
up,
come in there.
There'll only be little pinfish that
Yeah.
you'll get for bait. You won't get them for
The great big ones, for the red snappers.
For the snappers. Good job, Dave.
Wow, you guys are full of good information over
How
there.
about it?
I
Full
love
of
it. Full of it. You're just full of it. All right, we hope you've got some Proshuck's jerky to snack on while you're landing some fish this weekend, and that's just what guide Matt Reed in the Proshuck Smokehouse Lower Fresh region is going to help us do. Right, Matt?
I hope I can help you with that a little bit, Brie.
Me too. Let's get going.
All right, let's get this report going. We're going to start this off talking a little bit about bait. As far as largemouth bass, I'm totally an artificial guy. So, I don't use any bait for that. I think your mortality is too high on largemouth if you're using live bait, and we want to keep those things alive. But as far as fish that I target for the table, man, if you're crappie fishing, a live minnow is hard to beat. You just, that's the best there is. It'll be better than a jig anytime. For catfish, prepared dough baits, night crawlers, or fresh dead shad are great choices in the bait for that type of thing. So you need to have what you need and get after it to catch you some table fare. I'm going to get started on my bass report for the lower region. I start off at Lake Falcon. It's fishing pretty fair right now. The wind's been brutal this week, so it's kind of kept me confined, but there's a couple of patterns working really well. The shad are spawning on the shallow points early in the morning, and that when the shad spawn, that puts all the game fish up there with them, feeding on them. You can catch them really well on a 1.5 square ball in school bus or moon glow color, and that lasts till 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. Then the deeper bite is good out on the main lake rock using the Carolina rig fluke in plum color. Move on up to Lake Travis in the Austin area. Lake Travis is fishing good right now. You're catching a lot of fish on a wacky rig, 4-inch Cinco style worm and watermelon. You can also catch them on a small swim bait on a ball jig head or a scrounger head. Some of the bigger fish are being caught on jigs and Texas rig crawl worms around the docks. Another pattern that's working well, you can a walking topwater bait like a spook on the bluff ends, and that catches a bunch of those big old post-spawn big fish. Lake Decker is fishing pretty good right now on Texas rig 4 to 5 inch worms and green pumpkin. Throw them around any type of drop-off or cover that you can find. I also catches some big fish on a fluke in that shallow water in the 6 to 8 pound range. That's a lot of fun, and you can find you a big one. Moving further over into central Texas, over that direction, Lake Belton. Belton's fishing well in that 5 to 15 foot range with the Texas rig crawl worm and creature bait. Target any cover you can find in that depth of water. There's some underwater trees and stuff that you need to throw those Texas rigs in. Catching some on spinnerbaits and crankbaits that are still shallow. Moving back down, Choke Canyon, bass up to 3 pounds can be found on the inside grass line. They're feeding on threadfin shad, and some days they're actually schooling on the top. Using your hydrowave on feeding frenzy setting will keep those fish active up on top and keep them schooling longer. You can catch them on liftless crankbaits or swim baits and shad colors. Once we go down, you can catch them on Texas rig. Bigger ones have been hard to find, but if you want to target a big fish, get out on the main lake points in 15 to 20 foot of water with a big crankbait or Carolina rig, and you might find the ones you're looking for. One more lake we're going to hit for some bass. Fayette County is fishing very well. Most of them right now is a bunch of good fish on the riprap on the dam. You can catch them on a shaky head worm, a drop shot, or a Carolina rig. Darker colors have been best lately instead of the natural colors. Some shallow fish are still biting swim jigs and liftless crankbaits over the grass in the shallow water. Got a picture there of Brian Cotter with a little customer, a little young guy that caught him a great big old bass over at Lake Decker last week.
That fish makes him look tiny.
Yeah, it does. All right.
So cute.
That's always fun when you can have a little guy catch a great big one. That's what it's all about. Let's change species. The white bass at Falcon are going crazy on that shad spawn. I don't know how many hundred I could catch in a day right now throwing on a crankbait in a chartreuse color or a shad color in that 5-foot range around the windy point. It's very frustrating when I'm black bass fishing right now, but it would be a lot of fun if you were targeting those whites because you can just catch them one after another. Lake Somerville whites are also fishing good on jig and spoons in about 12 to 17 foot of water around Welch Park. That picture there is just a sample of a good dinner that you can catch white bass fishing right now at either Somerville or Falcon.
Nice.
Catfish at Choke Canyon. They're fairly shallow in the creeks because they're in that post-spawn phase. You can catch a ton of eater-sized channel cat and blue cat on stink bait, cut bait, or dead shad. That's what I've got this week, guys.
All right, great report
Thank
from the
you.
Pro 6 Smokehouse. And don't forget, guys, that if you want to get some Pro 6 sausage
Yes.
or jerky or steaks or any of the stuff, and there's great rubs, you might want to use a promo code so you can get additional 10%. The promo code is TIFR. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the hot spots from the Lower Fresh region. Matt says that we're going to go to Lake Falcon and Lake Somerville. White bass are biting extremely well. Crankbaits are shallow on the rocky points at Falcon and will fill the boat. And then Somerville's whites are biting jig spoons around Welch's Park. How about that, Brie?
The Lower Fresh region is always producing some big fish and good amounts of fish too.
I know, and seeing all those fish making me hungry.
Making you hungry. I knew you were going to say that. All right, Rick, let's talk about CCA Texas and how they contributed $200,000 to help fund a flounder spawning building at Sea Center, Texas in Lake Jackson that will be in production and completed in the next several months. This 2,000 square foot building will have 5 13-foot raceway style tanks and water temperature control to maximize flounder spawn with the goal to release 50,000 flounder fingerlings the first year. CCA Texas, the leader in marine conservation, always.
I wonder what a flounder fingerling looks like.
So cute.
I bet. It's like, does it look like a thumbnail?
I'm sure it does. A fingerling,
Something.
I'm sure. So
I'd like
cute.
to
They're
see.
always doing amazing
Let's research
things,
that,
though.
Brie.
Okay, Google, let's go. All right, we're fishing in the upper and lower coast regions next, so stay hooked on the Texas Insider Fishing Report. And remember to keep up with us and everything fishing in Texas. Make sure to visit our website, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, watch us on YouTube, and check us out on Instagram. We'll be right back.
The Texas Insider Fishing Report is brought to you by Contender Boats, always in the game. Bass Assassin and Saltwater Assassin, the best lures, period. CCA Star, fishing fun for giant prizes and scholarships. And Project Smokehouse, a link above.
An entirely new species of extreme predator is moving offshore. The Yamaha 5.6-liter V8 XTO offshore outboard. Extreme big block thrust and power in the industry's first direct injection 4-stroke. Quiet, efficient, powerful, and proven Yamaha reliability. More than an outboard, it's a fully integrated power system. The all-new Yamaha V8 XTO Offshore.
As close as you're gonna get to a sure thing for catching billfish is Guatemala.
They're here, man. This has been a 20-year run, buddy. These things haven't left. There's no cycle. When it comes to sail fishing, this is the real deal.
The amount of sailfish here is ridiculous.
Today's power pole tip is about the power pole spike. Now it's really important to have the right presentation. These tarpon and permit are swimming down the edge of the flat, and by only using the power pole off the back, the wind would blow us up on the flat and we wouldn't be laying on the edge where we're waiting for these fish to swim by. So The great part about the spike is it allows us to manipulate the way the boat lays in the channel and in the current and wind. The other thing that we use the spike for is when we go down sandbarring, a lot of times you have a lot of extra rope when anchoring, and that can be problematic. People will run over your ropes. You also have to have one at the front and one at the back because of the current and the wind. So by utilizing 2 spikes, it's absolutely perfect. Now remember, the spike comes with a rope already attached, so simply all you gotta do is stick it in the sand. And that's today's power pole tip.
All right, now let's talk with our Garmin Lower Coast Region Captain, Chad Kinney, who's got some fresh bait news that is essential if you're going offshore or staying inshore this weekend. Hey, Chad, got Dave behind us.
That'll work. Well, I'm ready to talk about that. I'm good at the bait fishing and everything else. And actually this weekend, I was looking at the weather forecast, looking great this weekend. So if y'all are sitting on the fence, get off it and go bait fishing offshore. It's looking perfect. I see seas at less than 2 feet. So heading inshore here out of South Padre Island, Longbar is holding some good trout action over there, and the redfish up around the Gaswell Flats and out east of there for some sight casting action. Offshore, the state water snapper fishing still remaining good. Look for that structure, 59 foot of water, produce your state snapper there, and occasionally we'll get a grouper in there with it, mixed in with it. So moving on to bait here, talking about that. Like I said, we got our own bait boats here at Laguna Madre Baits, and so we know the season, and they change through there. So right now the shrimp are getting at the tail end. So live shrimp still working really well. This is important in your arsenal there, but it's going to be moved on to croaker and pogies and pinfish and stuff like that. So like I said, live shrimp's still working well. And the live croaker is showing up in May 1st when you can actually start catching a bunch of croaker. They'll get to size, and the trout will start feeding on them. Live croaker be really good basically from now through the end of September. Switch back into probably a little bit shrimp after that. Once you get offshore there, if you have any access to fresh squid, sardines, menhaden, all that reef fish stuff like that, get your ballyhoo, get ready. We're rigged on island lures. You can't beat that. Make sure you got a ballyhoo and island lure in your arsenal if you're heading out there in your split tail mullet, and that's the best thing to go. So moving on these trout, fishing in here like in a longbar on South Padre, you can work those edges in the guts. If you're fishing your live shrimp and popcorn, which is doing good, work that edge and that stuff go through there. If you have access to the croaker and got live croaker, the bite's been actually turning on pretty good here. Power pull down on those guts on the corners there, and you're getting plenty of solid trout in that 16 to 22 inch range. On that live croaker also, for your pinfish or your pogies, piggies, which you're going to be using, go ahead and start out right now with like a 5/0 tail hook until the baits get bigger as the summer moves along, and then move up to like a 7/0 tail hook and use like a free line with a 20, 30 pound fluorocarbon leader and work those baits with the trout and stuff like that if you're on the edge like that. By that, I mean keep your rod tip up, give it some twitches and stuff like that. When you feel a thump, just go straight down, point your rod straight to where the fish is at. When the line gets tight, that gives you 2 things. 1, enough time for them to eat it, and 2, when you set the hook, you got more time to set the hook and get a good hook set on them. So got a picture here of a trout. It's not a monster trout, but it's a good average size keeper. It's 18-inch trout, and that's what we can expect if you want to get some good food to take home for the day.
All right.
Moving in the redfish. Redfish have been kind of scattered, but we're getting some at Gaswell Flats. Live shrimp, popping corks working well, especially if you got a little bit more muddy water and stuff like that. Make some long drifts, like I said, because they're kind of scattered. And if you want to get some sight casts and move out east from there and hit from there, maybe down towards Green Island and stuff like that, and look for those redfish. When you get up there, you got the shallow water running boats, so you have to kind of zigzag through and make sure you spot some redfish before you stop. You're not going to see a lot of them. You'll probably see 2, 3, 4, 5, and if you do, shut down. Gold spoons work really well on that. 1/8 ounce to 1/4 ounce is always a good choice. And then the saltwater Satson's paddle tail. You use one with the paddle tail through there, you get a lot more action on there, and with a quick retrieve works good. Like I said, there won't be a ton of fish, but make sure when you're sight casting, you got casts behind the fish and in front of them, so we produce your lure. It's got to go right in front of his nose there to get that deal. And try a quick retrieve. Sometimes you can't almost reel fast enough to get those fish to ignite and actually start biting on it. So moving into the offshore, we had a big northern blow through, a week or so ago, so it pushed a lot of that blue water they've had coming in farther out to that 60, 70 mile range. That's going to start coming back in here. I'll let you know when. It's going to start coming back in pretty quick, I believe. We'll get that southeast wind and the current starts going. But in the meantime, the state water snapper fishing's still been really good. In that 50, 90 foot of water, like I said, anchor up. I've been saying everything with the current still a little bit higher. Fresh bait, key thing on that stuff. Again, get fresh bait. If not, go to your local marina and get some cigar minnows or anything else you can get your hands on and be good. And then try heavier vertical jigging at the currents up there, 5 to 8 ounce. and then work the bottom if you want a shot at a grouper. Tip I do on that one, guys, is just get yourself your favorite jig and go down naked. Don't tip it or nothing like that. Try to keep the snapper off it. Work that 3 to 5 feet up the bottom. Don't jig it like you're doing for amberjack or anything. Just kind of move it up and down and get plenty of time. You might get lucky at a shot like a gag grouper. I got a picture of a pretty gag grouper here.
All right, well, thank you for all the pictures. You did great tonight. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the lower coast hotspots. Captain Chad says inshore, head out South Padre Island to the Long Bar for trout action. Look for the redfish around the Gaswell Flats and out east for sight casting. And then offshore, state waters, red snapper fishing remains good. Look for the structure of 50 to 90 feet of water to produce red snappers and an occasional grouper.
An occasional grouper. I'd like an occasional grouper. That'd be nice.
Maybe.
All right, if you want the fish to bite in the Fish Bites Upper Coast region, you're definitely going to need the right bait, and Captain Carl Weston is just the guy to tell us what and how. So, Carl, let's hear it.
Hi, Rick and Brie. How you doing?
Doing good.
Good.
What you got?
Well, on bait inshore, we use a lot of croaker and live shrimp for trout and redfish. And most of the bait camps in the area, if you're not sure of where to find bait, just Google bait. You'll find plenty of. You'll find more than you know what to do with. So inshore wise, that's mainly what we use for live bait. And offshore, we use a wide variety of bait offshore. Usually whatever we can get: herring, hardtails, shad, mullet, and we're usually catching that with a cast net offshore, running up and down the beaches looking for the birds. And so we're getting our own bait when it comes to that. So and then that's about it for live bait. Is that, guys? If you want to talk about plastic baits or anything today?
All right, well, let's just go ahead and get right into here. So I see here that you're talking about popping cork, casting them, using them, as well as with soft plastics, mirror lures, and bass assassins. Is there any specific sizes that you like?
Well, it's just depending on matching the hats, really. You know, the size of the bait in your area is the size of the bait you're going to use, both inshore and offshore, to get the the best bite.
And so what kind of offshore baits do you like to use if it's dead, Carl?
Oh, dead? We use a lot of squid and cigar minnows for our dead bait. And you can use those whole or cut. But once again, depending on the size of the fish, if you want a larger bait, use it whole, or if you want a smaller bait, cut it down to whatever size you think you need for your fish.
And so offshore, do you use any types of jigs? And if you do use jigs, what about tipping them?
Yeah, tipping jigs is awesome. And, like we were saying, cigar minnows, and we're also using bucktails and jigs. We've been trying to tip them with some of the fish bites, and it seems to be working just as well as the dead bait.
All right, good. Well, go ahead and tell me about the redfishing then.
All right. Our redfish have started to move back into the grass on the north shoreline of West Galveston Bay. This will be a pattern that will stay consistent with us throughout the summertime. There are sand pockets within the grass, and the reds will use these pockets as ambush points, hiding in the grass and swimming out to feed on the bait that strolls by. So working paddle tail soft plastics like a mirror lure, marsh minnow, and the plum chartreuse or blue moon has seemed to get us the most bites recently. Rigging these soft plastics weedless is the best due to all the thick grass. And if they're being a little picky on the paddle tail, try a straight tail mirror lure provoker, because even in these high wind days, the grass back there will filter the water and keep that nice and clean. Here we have a picture of a nice red caught just last week.
That is
he looks happy.
He was happy.
That's great.
All right, so what else you got for us tonight, Bub?
Well, going offshore, we had a few charters get out. I got a good report from Captain Mike with Velasco Charters that said he picked up some Dorado on scattered weed lines around 50 miles off, some scattered debris. And these Dorado can be caught in numerous ways. What we prefer, artificial-wise, casting a small gold spoon around the debris or along the edge of the weed line. And as you know, Dorado are very curious. If there's anything floating offshore at all, logs, trash, weeds, there's a good possibility you'll find them. As far as natural baits go, we use cut squid or cigar minnows on a small 2 to 4, J hook. We tie on a small 2-foot piece of, say, 20-pound test fluorocarbon to hide it a little bit, and that's your best bet. And as you know, Rick, a little trick to catching these guys, or a lot of these guys, is to keep one of them hooked up in the water, and that school will stay around the boat, and it'll give you an opportunity to catch a whole lot more.
Yeah, every time he comes up and jumps and pukes up all his dinner, guess what? Everybody's chummed right in. Tell me about the photo here, Bub, of this Dorado.
That is Mr. Mike Ford with his Dorado from last week.
All right. Well, how about some kingfish?
Well, we've also got a good report on some kingfish. With that little break in the weather we had Saturday, Captain Brian Wilson with Pit Boss Charters had a good day on some nice kingfish. These fish were out in the 70-foot range, and they were trolling deep divers and skipping some sardines on topwater. I don't remember the amount they caught, but they had a nice day. And like he said, always remember to use a steel leader on these fish because they will cut you off quick.
All right, tell me about the photo.
That is his deckhand Jamie with a nice kingfish for this time of year.
All right, well, thank you so much. Great report from the Mirrolure. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the Mirrolure hotspots from the Upper Coast region. He says inshore redfish, north shoreline of West Galveston Bay in the grass, working sand pockets inside the grass in 1 to 2 feet of water with Mirrolure marsh minnow paddle tails rigged weedless. Okay. Try plum, chartreuse, blue moon. That seems to be the color that's working best. And then offshore, small Dorados on the weed lines or near anything floating, cast gold spoons or natural cut bait like squid, cigar minnows on a small 2-0 J hook and tie on about 2 feet of that 20-pound fluorocarbon leader that he was talking about.
And keep that first one in the water.
That's it.
Absolutely. All right, we've got one more region left to lure in here on the Texas Insider Fishing Report, so stay hooked if you're fishing the Yeti Upper Fresh region. But first, let's see what Dave Ferrell is selling us on for new products at the CCA Workbench. It's a beautiful Dave net.
Is my tent too dark?
Yes. A little bit. It's not legal. It's not legal.
You look like a nun.
He's not a nun. We're not nuns.
That's a stretch.
We'll be back with your nun
The Texas Insider Fishing Report is brought to you by Yeti, built for the wild. Turn on the bite anytime. Tie on a Mirrolure. Building Conservation Trust. CCA's National Habitat Program. And Startron, cures and prevents ethanol fuel problems.
At the pinnacle of super high output, 4-stroke outboard performance, you'll find Yamaha VMAX SHO. Yamaha's game-changing SHO technology. From exhilarating V6 models to the sleek inline 4s, there's a VMAX SHO for everything from bass to bonefish. It's an extended family of 4-strokes engineered for lightweight, inspiring performance, and rock-solid reliability. Discover VMAX SHO and elevate your expectations.
Oh, there it is. You can either stay busy fishing or get busy catching. From Texas to Tampa Bay or Key West to the Carolinas and beyond. For nearly 20 years, anglers everywhere have come to know one thing, that nothing says no to fish bites. Ask for Fish Bites and Fish Bites Fight Club lures by name or visit fishbites.com.
Over 40 years ago, Mr. Proshek began smoking meat in a little Texas town called Hilgi, combining fresh, grade A ingredients to create a variety of legendary smoked meats. Today, Proshek's Smokehouse is a Texas tradition, and now Proshek's not only satisfies hunger in Texas, but across the country. Visit Prosheks.com and order everything from fresh meats to your choice of jerky. Proshek's meats are made by Prosheks, sold by Prosheks, and can be delivered in as little as a day. Proshek's Smokehouse, a link above.
Well, we're here at the CCA Workbench, and it's time.
Yes, we are.
New products. We're talking about bait tonight, and looks like you got some stuff to clean the boat and bait stuff.
Yes, we do. Well, these are from R&R Tackle. These are the mesh bait nets that they make, and they come in 3 different sizes. These are have a really nice mesh. It's a double layer of mesh inside that minimizes damage to your bait. Now, Ray's very serious about taking really good care of his bait. That's why he wins a lot of tournaments and stuff, is because he has the best bait. And these are some of the nets that he's made for that. And they come in 3 different sizes. And this is the medium net here. This has a plastic bottom in it. And what this does is it allows, instead of all the water draining out really quick, it'll allow some water to stay in there that the baits won't lay on their sides and lose more slime as well. And not only that, when you start to scoop the bait with that clear bottom, it doesn't scatter them away. They think, oh, I'm going to swim right through that hole. And they get caught.
Smart.
Very
but
cool.
by having them in the water,
yep, it keeps them.
It's not knocking, the mesh is not knocking the scales off. I've seen it firsthand. Ray and I fished together in 2008 for a whole sailfish season, and I learned more about bait in that 1 year in my life. I can't believe how much I learned from him.
He does a lot of good stuff. Anyway, you get 3 sizes again, really nice nylons.
rnrtackle.com.
R&R. All right. Starbright products, during the whole month of May at Academy, they're going to have, everything's going to be on sale there. So Starbright's correct. Right. They're all going to be on sale. So this is their Stains 101 collection here. It kind of sounds like it could be my nickname, actually. My wife would insist that would be my Stains 101.
Oh boy.
I've probably graduated though. I'm like 30, 23 stains. But anyway, there's this new solid deck cleaner. We're going to start the deck cleaner right there. When you have that non-skid deck, it collects everything. I have a little dog I like to take fishing. Dog prints everywhere, footprints.
Shoes are not the friend of non-skid.
It gets caught up in everything. You use some of that non-skid deck cleaner. It's not really a soap. It uses chelating agents that keep the dirt from sticking. It breaks that bond with the non-skid and comes right out. You just spray it on there, let it sit for a minute, come back, a light brush will get everything off.
Guys, remember, bleach is not the friend of fiberglass.
Fiberglass, vinyl, anything. It dries stuff out. It'll burn your skin. It's bad for the fish.
What next?
Next, we're going to do the hull cleaner. It's right here.
Hull cleaner.
And the liquid or gel, and it gets, if you have leaves get in your boat, leave the stains, rust stains, water stains from bad water. Yeah. Exactly. This stuff will get the stains off your fiberglass. Liquid or gel, it'll melt the stains away. You apply it again, let it sit, come back with a light brush. And it's also good for prepping or polishing if you're wanting to do, if you're going to put a new coat of wax on, always use that stuff first. This is mildew stain remover. If you're on a boat, you're going to get mildew in it. Your anchor locker,
in the hatches.
all your hatches. If you leave any water in there at all, and you're going to eventually, this stuff is going to be what you need to break that mildew down. It kills mildew on contact, and it's good for the showers, your garage, everywhere. Last, we have the magic sponge. These things, have been very popular everywhere, but this is an all-purpose cleaner.
XL.
Yeah. Millions of tiny little bubbles in there, just scouring away at anything you put it on. And if you just wet it down a little bit, this one's got the nice big yellow section in the middle that adds for a good grip, so it won't fall apart on you like a lot of the other brands will. So, these will last longer, and you get a really firm grip on them.
And then obviously you got your deck brush, soft, which extends.
Correct.
All right, Dave.
Right now we've got this Yeti Tundra hauler, it's called, and this is what everybody's been waiting for, is a nice Yeti cooler with wheels. That's the first Yeti cooler with wheels. They're the never flat wheels. They're made out of a solid single-piece construction, impact and puncture resistant. The handle that it's got now is a welded aluminum handle. It's durable and it's curved so that when you pick it up and you're pulling stuff, it's not banging on your heels. So, which is really cool. It's got the roto-molded construction.
5-year warranty,
unmatched installation. You can't beat it to death with a 4-pound hammer. You can't break that thing. Virtually indestructible. Cooler for life when you get a Yeti.
Speaking of beating Never mind. Brie.
Wow. I was going to say, Yeti sure thinks of everything, Rick, don't they? Always coming up with new things. I don't know how they do it. And new colors that are always beautiful.
Anyway, a lot of smart people working for them.
As they do. All right, we're keeping things cool for our last guide in the Yeti Upper Fresh region with Johnny Geis, who gives us a good old bait talking to. So, Johnny, let us in on some of your big bass catching wisdom.
Hey, Brie and Rick, how y'all?
Good.
Hey, we're talking about bait this week, so I thought I'd share with our viewers several types of baits being used up this way to catch some big bass and stripers this spring. Black salty, I don't know if you heard about them. They're about the size and shape of a goldfish, and they're silver and bronze colored. They make an excellent live bait, and they catch some big bass. In fact, I caught an 8.5 pounder on one this morning.
Wow.
Water dogs, they're a salamander-type bait, sometimes used to catch big bass also. And nothing beats a large gizzard shad or big minnow. Small minnows are best for crappie, but they'll catch about anything that swims. We got the bluegill about ready to spawn here, and they'll be hitting on gray crickets and earthworms and old catfish. They'll just bite about any kind of bait. So, hey, let's talk about some crappie over at Lake of the Pines, a little east of us here. Guide Seth Benover with Lake Fork Catfish and Crappie Guide Service. He's been putting his customers on some excellent catches of both black and white crappie at Lake of the Pines and at Fork. He's been targeting spawning crappie, about 3 foot of water less, and there's still plenty of crappie up spawning. They are starting to move out to some brush piles. The jigs and minnows are working best. Some days the crappie prefer one over the other, so you got to figure out which one works. Look for those spawning crappie in the protected coves that have vegetation. They'll usually be bedded up together, so when you catch one, you'll usually find others close by. Most of the time, crappie seem to be on the points or on the shallow drains of that vegetation. Just a little tip where to find them. Hey, Garmin, one of our great sponsors, has come up with Garmin Live Scope, and Seth has been using some. He's having outstanding success with his new Garmin Fish Finder. He's able to watch his jig or minnow fall into schools of crappie and actually watch the fish swim up to the bait and hit the jig. Many times he's telling his customers they got a bite even before they feel the thump. This new technology has revolutionized crappie fishing, and it'll be great for all other species as well. We had a recent professional crappie tournament here on Fork, and the top 3 teams all use the Garmin Live Scope to locate and pick off 2-pound crappie, so it's the real deal. So thanks, Garmin, for the Live Scope product. I've already heard it called a game changer several times, and I'll be getting one on my boat real soon. Hey, Seth has even taught his 7-year-old son, Evan, how to use a Garmin Live Scope. This kid caught it by himself. Look at the 2 nice crappie he caught.
Dang.
The product.
Oh,
fat
cutie.
ones. Those are some tugs there, Bob. All right. Tell me about some stripers.
We're going to catch them over at Tawakoni, at Striped Fish over on Lake Tawakoni. Guy met Cartwright on Lake Tawakoni. He's reporting excellent fishing on all 3 types of striped bass. Limits of white bass, hybrids, and stripers. They've been caught almost daily when the winds will allow a full day of fishing. Sometimes all 3 stripes can be caught in the same school, but usually the bigger fish school up individually. Similar lures catch all 3 species, but the stripers usually prefer the larger bait, and nothing can beat that large gizzard shad for a large striper. The small swim baits, like an Assassin Sea Shad on a 1/2 or 3/4 ounce jig head, works great for both white bass and hybrids. You'll find the fish schooling on the windy points. Then they move on out to the deeper water. Watch for that bird activity to give away the schooling fish. The shad spawn is on, so top water activity can be good, but be careful of unhooking those fish to avoid being stuck by that treble hook in your hand. I know for a fact. Single jig hook's much easier and faster to unhook your fish, so you can quickly cast out for another bite. Again, white chartreuse color swim baits seem to be working best. Once those fish go down, the slab's your best bet. 3/4 ounce or 1 ounce silver chartreuse slab will get you best. Hop it along the bottom, bites come on the fall. Hey, Matt shared a couple of pictures. Look at this big striper that one of his customers got this week, and a table full of fillets.
Wow.
So, Johnny, I do have a couple.
Time of years here, we got top water bites starting here on Lake Fork, so get out this weekend and get some to big top water zone and catch you a big fish. Let's go fishing.
So, Johnny, I want to ask you about the Live Scope. You know, I know you don't have one, but I want to make sure that you know, with Garmin being a sponsor of ours, we can get you one. That's number 1. But number 2, when you say the guys are using it to see the fish, tell me a little bit about what they're saying, please.
Okay, when they're using this live scope, of course, they have the transducer hooked on a different pole, and they're actually turning it to watch around the trees, the brush piles, or the bridge pilings, and you can actually see the fish. They're actually moving, and they're just milling around in a school. Once you drop down the jig, you'll see it falling right down in the scope, right there on your screen, and you'll see the fish actually move up and react to the bait.
All right, thank you so much for clearing that up for me. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the hot spots from the Upper Fresh region. He says Lake of the Pines, the water is stained and is about 3 feet high. Crappie are biting in the shallows and mid-depths. Jigs and minnows are the best baits for that. And then Tawakoni, whites, hybrids, and stripers are biting great. Swim baits and slab spoons are the best baits to try. And remember that the water is 67 to 71 degrees, Brie.
Well, there y'all have it. A successful fishing trip starts with bait, guys, right? I mean, if you don't have the right bait, you're not going to catch the right fish.
Right.
Or no fish at all.
Whether it's artificial or live, you got to know.
Or live, you got to know. All right, guys, well, remember to check us out on Pursuit and Discovery Channel, Sportsman Adventures, Real Life on our YouTube channel. Thanks for tuning in. Next week, we'll be back to our original reports with all of our captains. We'll still be talking a little bit about bait.
Dave, you going fishing this weekend?
I'm going fishing tomorrow.
Oh. Maybe we should go with him, Brie. Come on, let's go.
I'm gonna go.
Let's all go.
I'm gonna go.
Come
go
on.
catch some big bass.
We can take some jerky and we'll be on our way.
We'll be taking some jerky. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you next week.
Guys.